All right, internet is working tonight. Check. That is the first thing that we pray for when we're going to go on to do a live. And just want to take a moment to welcome you to this live tonight. And thank you for taking a moment to connect with us. We're going to introduce ourselves, jump into what we're doing. We're just going to do a stall for a minute and let people get situated to click in and join us. So, Ange, this is the part where I don't know.
No silent air. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not used to silent air, so there's silent space.
as a former broadcaster, the silent space is like the most terrifying place to be. So I feel you on that.
I'm gonna pick on a friend here. So there's I'm not going to say her name, but there's a special friend of mine that part of the reason she's reached out to me because of my skill set, and she's texting me right now that we're late and get going. So I want to remind her that I'm volunteering and to back off.
Give us a hot minute to get situated, friend.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, it's their hearts. I remember what it is like to be in a state of emergency. I get it. Yeah. I totally get it. But yeah.
Well, we're here and we're ready to talk. And what's nice is even though we're live, people can go back and rewatch this later. They can share it with friends. They can send it to other communities. You can share this video onto your social media pages. And our goal tonight is just to try to educate and share people as much as possible. So we'll get started with that a little bit. My name is Jody Seeley, and I am a resident of High River, Alberta. And I 100% know what you're going through in this current state, as I lived through it back in 2013. Joining us on this live tonight is Angela Groeneveld, who is with EmergAgency, and is also someone who has some pretty extensive experience in flood recovery and disaster recovery services. And so we are two volunteers who just felt on our hearts that we wanted to reach out to communities who are going through something we have gone through and just open up an opportunity to converse about it. We were calling it, I think going into it, we wanted to call it a little bit some lessons learned that we wanted to pass on to communities. And we want to have you have some dialogue into what that looks like tonight. So that's kind of where we're coming from, I think is the easiest way, Angela. But and I'll let you explain. I know that you worked quite a bit on sort of administrative government side when the flood occurred in 2013, and you worked extensively with the community of Fort McMurray that went through not flooding, but also disaster. So welcome and thank you for volunteering your time to have a conversation with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for volunteering to host. Before I get into this, I want to set the table here of what who you're talking to. So I also was a resident of the county around Foothills County that was around High River, and we were affected by the flood. Our ranch property out there, our cattle, we lost a lot of property because we were right on the Bull River there. So I understand from an agricultural side, our home was fine. We were up high on that, but we were also affected. And as Jody lost her home as well. And Jody also played a very important role. She was the radio. I'm going to let her explain herself, but she was a key influencer leader of communication. And then the citizen going through it all. And then she also, into the phase 3 recovery, she then worked for an arm's length of the government to help recover. And my role was, I was a business coach at the time, and I was asked to come and lead the business and economic recovery for High River. And so my title was business renewal, and we were an entire administration, second to your regular administration right now, because there was so much work, and we were in the renewal office. So Jody, I just want you to take a minute to explain. So we'd love to get the questions going here in the dialogue, but explain your background and your role through the 6 years of recovery.
Sure. Well, mine shifted interestingly through the process, but it started out with I was the morning show host of the local radio station in High River during the actual day of flooding and through that process. And so my role really was in delivery of information, ensuring that the community was getting the right and proper information 24/7. We did some really long shifts during the beginning of that process to keep people informed and updated, and just getting out information consistently. It shifted from that in the same role to becoming an engager in community. I think people required some normalcy through that process. So me being someone they did a morning routine with every day prior to the flood was essential getting through that. And so we did a lot of work in engaging community, cheering community, bringing people through, and again, still bringing information through at the same time. And I got to have some really incredible opportunity in ensuring people were staying connected. One of the key things that we'll talk about through this process is connection, connection, connection is really essential through this process with your community. And then through that shifted from my radio role. I ended up leaving that because we got a grant to do disaster recovery engagement in the community. So from there, I went into, we built an organization called Our High River. And through that was strictly community engagement, connecting community, keeping people informed, same kind of processes, just different platforms. And then I sat on the emergency social services team for other preparing for, also in recovery, but preparing for any other future problems. And then in that did some extensive training in the mental health factor of recovery. And so we did a lot of work in securing mental health programs, checking in on mental health, creating and using tools to help people with mental health, and became advocates of a really great conversational tool that helps in disaster recovery, built in disaster, called How's Your Five. And so we can talk more about that as we go through this process of just checking in with community. So that gives you a little bit of, I guess, some of the pieces that I worked through in that kind of that whole time, even up to now being 8 years later.
Yeah. Thank you. And then also you were affected. I can actually remember going by your house when you were cleaning it out.
Yeah. On top of being someone who's helping, I know the process of being evacuated and being out of your home. And I actually didn't get to return and live in my home until 18 months later. So I know those pieces and those processes. And I think we both have interesting backgrounds. So we want to encourage you as we talk and go through tonight. If you have a question or a concern or something that you kind of want to bring up, please throw it into the comments and we are going to try to answer as many questions as we can. If you're catching this video later and are not live with us, still post your questions in there because we will be alerted that there's questions and we're going to come in and try to answer them and do the best that we can to just help you through this time frame.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I spent the last hour kind of prepping for this call, and I was doing some research on everything that's been done in BC right now. So we're going to switch now and talk to you are in a state of emergency. You're probably not going to hear recovery a lot, but there's a long road here. This is a common sentence that I say is that it's a marathon and not a sprint. And when you heard her say 18 months till back in her home, this is the seriousness that we're going to speak to tonight that you're in, because there was a lot of mistakes made. And having that conversation, I reached out to the mayor, Craig Snodgrass. He's a very good friend of mine. I'm probably one of his biggest fans as political role model as the mayor, because what he did in High River and what he had to face, just on that fact, working with him, it was tough, and he did it, and he built back a better community. Or downtown was the part that I worked with him the most on, but the entire community from flood mitigation. And so he has shared some tips that I'm going to share tonight. He also, I said to him, we might be reaching out to ask you to speak to the citizens or to speak to council or whoever you'd like. Jody and I have access to so many people with experience and expertise in flood recovery, and that we're part of the team. So specifically what you are looking for, if we don't have that answer, we will reach back to somebody who will. I'm part of many plans. My gosh, don't spend any more money on recovery plans is my opinion, because there's so many. You have to customize them to your community, and that takes some work, and you need some extra expertise to do that. But on that note, tonight is my opinion only. So if you're going to try and talk to me about that I have it wrong, or that I don't get it, or try to come back on me on anything, it's going to fall on deaf ears. I'm volunteering. I'm sharing my experience. I'm not even going to engage in the conversation. And I'm saying this because I've done this before and I've been attacked on it before. There's already some talk about that I'm posturing for a job, and I'm posturing because I do this, and I'm not. I had a friend and I had a bunch of people reach out asking me for help, and I'm from BC. My hometown is the East Kootenays, and I'm very passionate about my work. But this is all for free, and this is all just paying forward. There's no other agenda here. So I want to make that clear. And if I might have something wrong, because I get going and I get passionate about it, and I'm probably going to be wrong on it. So be listening with this with a buyer beware attitude, because things are different in every community. But we'll go from there. Tonight we want to talk to you about safety and health and the mental health. I was kind of raised a little cowgirl tough and not really worried about that mental health. And I'm a big fan about it now, because you just roll up your sleeves, you get to work and you get it done, and you keep going. And you cannot do that in disaster recovery, because my doctor has become a good friend. He has spoke at a lot of disaster recovery. I've pulled back to him. And the way he says is you can keep withdrawing from the bank, and you can keep withdrawing from your system and from your body. And eventually then you go into the overdraft, and eventually there's nothing left. And that's when you crack. I've experienced people with have heart attacks. Like, we've had suicides, heart attacks, domestic, everything. It's tough. So if we could pay forward to take care of yourself through this, I know it's hard because there's a lot of work with you. But the mayor's message from High River tonight was one thing. He said, tell them to slow down. You think you're in a hurry. You had an evacuation alert today already again. Imagine if that flood had come back in. So the safety thing right now is the safety of the town. What is the flood mitigation? You have two rivers the way, and I'm talking to the Princeton people, but I understand there's going to be Abbotsfords. There's a whole bunch of different communities that are listening right now. Push anybody to be answering, how do we prevent this from happening again? The reason is for insurance. If you don't have a mitigation plan in place for safety of your lives and your homes, your insurance companies are going to look at that. That was my job in renewal, was to gather all the insurance companies and bring them in and talk to them and say, what is it going to take for you to insure these homes here? And then council and administration were sitting there, and then that was their job, was to find out that information so that the citizens could feel more confident to rebuild, knowing they would get insurance. So the other thing was the safety in the homes. Right now, you guys have done the color coding on your homes, and we're nervous of that, because there in High River it was a mistake. There was some people were given that their house was okay, but they went back in and then they remediated it too fast. They recovered it too fast, and the mold came back. So I'm not an expert in that. So I'm going to just, from a high level, what we heard, and I'm going to let Jody speak to that too, because it was in her home. But we had Mike Holmes, the celebrity from what's his company? Homes
on Homes or something. Yeah.
Anyways, he came down and he did a show, and you could probably YouTube that on High River when he was in there, and listen to it and listen to what he says. And Craig, the mayor, he was 1 year before he was back in his home or remediated and cleaned up, because you need to get it all down to the studs. You need to get it to those so that they can be air disinfected properly, so that the spores don't come back or the mold doesn't come back. It's black mold. So I can remember some commercial buildings in the downtown, because they recovered fast. Insurance is there. Yep, let's go. Let's do this. And they're doing it no matter what with flood mitigation, because they need to get back to business. They need to get it up and going. And we literally had electrical panels falling out of the drywall, right out of the dry, because there was so much moisture in the back of it, because all they did was block the moisture in there. And then as it goes through the seasons, or as the heat came on and the hot summers and stuff. So I want to pay that forward. So just start having that conversation. And Jody, do you have anything you want to input to that?
Well, again, not being an expert on mold issues in any way, shape, or form, I couldn't speak to it, but I know that I agree with the slowdown. And I know that, well, I don't know, but I will assume, because I've felt that piece before, is you just want to get home, especially in the time of year that we're in right now. And we want to be in our homes for Christmas. And my heart goes out to you 1000%, because I get that. But you will be better off if you slow down and do that process right. And I know that that's scary, and I know that that's overwhelming, but please trust that that process, you are going to get through this without 1 ounce of a doubt. It is doable, it is figure outable, it is attainable, and it's scary. So don't think about putting that deadline on yourself. Just put yourself into what is the safest, best thing for me and my family in this home. And that has to be such a priority. And it's so hard. I know that.
Yeah.
But you will feel better in the end when that process has done its due diligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Cause we also saw, like, if anybody would like, I can get a doctor to come in that is served in a community where a flood has happened. I could reach out to my doctor and he could speak to it. Him and his wife are both doctors, and they can explain to you of all the health and the sinuses and the air quality and all of that kind of stuff. And that can happen, that our instinct is to work, right? And how do you slow down? Where do you go? So that's why I want to bring up temporary housing. So we worked with ADCO and Sprung, and we had temporary housing. If you guys Google Saddlebrook temporary housing, we had that deployed so fast, because when you evacuate people out of their house, you have to have somewhere for them to go. And I've seen a lot of disasters. I've been serving in disaster space since 2013. I've never seen anything like this. You have a province that's in a state of emergency right now. We've seen certain demographic areas. They're isolated areas. They're in a certain radius. This is big, what's going on in BC. Big means long, and big means expensive. So I can't imagine, like, I'm going to ask you to be as kind as you can to your local government, your provincial government, your federal, because they're just humans that are too, and they don't know. They're doing the best they can, but this is big, and they're going to have to make some big decisions. And I just follow Princeton, the administration there. Like, it's great what they got going on. I reached out to your economic development, said, I'm here if you need anything. He said, thank you, keep you in mind. I was BC EDA. I was on LinkedIn today, and I saw that their president, he is very experienced, Dale, and he's leading some stuff there in. So they're doing the recovery efforts already. Like, you've got some good stuff going on. Are they going to get it right? Probably not. Is it going to be enough? No, but they're trying, and they're doing, and they customize it. That is why communicate to your counselors. They were elected to serve you. Give them the voice so they can move their voice into administration, and then administration can execute as needed. Right now, a lot of you are in a state of emergency. So I was in the Emergency Operations Center, and the power is in there. That's where the decisions are being made. So you don't really have a voice right now, because they're trying to make your community safe, but they do communicate with council, and they do communicate with your CEOs. So it is important to still keep, as she says, communication is so key, because to rebuild back, you got to all do it together. And it was a common thing that I heard High River say over and over that I paid is, it's not one organization, or it's not government. It's community rebuilds back community. So work with your administration, work with the resources, work with your non-for-profits on there. Don't start to split. And I know you're going to get angry, but stay focused on your end goals that you want to achieve. And I'm going to bring up the non-for-profits and the donations. That's a second disaster. It is terrible. You're going to get bombarded with donations. We had a problem with too many donations coming in, and where do we put them? We had to build second landfills because of all the garbage up in Fort McMurray. We had to do that as these houses come down. So if you can keep your dollars local, when she talks about our High River, now this is my opinion, and I'm going to let Jody have her opinion because she served in it. I just needed it for the business owners, but if you could get the donations as close to grassroots as you can, keep them local. Because We're storm people, like storm chasers is what I call it. Some people will come in and they will want to remediate your home. They'll want to fix it. They'll want to do this, their warranties. We had mobile trucks coming in from Saskatchewan, and then they're gone and you never hear from them again. So work with your Better Business bureaus, like work with all that to make sure that these are qualified people. But the same thing happened for donations and fundraising. So if you could have there was just too many and people didn't know where to go. So if you could have one local one because everyone goes away and forgets about all the BC floods in a year or two when another disaster happens, except for the citizens and except for the people still trying to recover, because this is a long road. There's 3 phases in recovery, and it's long. So you need the money to go along with all of those stages, and you'd want as less red tape as you can, which means don't put it in government. Red Cross, I love, but get the money out of Red Cross and get it to the local people as much as you can. Jody, do you want to add in on that?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that in initial emergency situations, organizations like the Red Cross or the Salvation Army or other NGOs that we had come into the community do really great work in that initial emergency scary piece that you're in right now. Long-term recovery pieces, which it's hard to wrap your brain around that in the emergency state, it's so better served when the dollars are local. And so I say that to anybody who's watching this who isn't in those communities, but you want to help and you want to do something, is donating to, if it's in Princeton, it's a Princeton charity that's based in that community, or in Abbotsford or in Merritt or in any of the other places that might be, is finding what that looks like. And so there will be organizations there who and groups where you can kind of sort of build that list and then share it out on your socials. And if people are like, we just want to donate something, then you call the local FCSS or a local charity group or a local something and keep your dollars in your community, because it's not easy to access the dollars that are ran by other organizations that aren't a part of your community later. And if nothing else, it just continues to build that community-driven backbone that supports each other through all that process. So donating local is always been my biggest advice for anybody going in a disaster situation.
Yeah, that's great.
We have a couple of questions, Ange. Do you want to try?
Yeah, let's go to questions. Yeah.
So Ginny's asking, and I'm not sure if you know the process for this, but she's saying, what is the process of recovering our property from the river? Who would we speak to on that?
So I think she lives on the river is what she's saying, and she wants to recover from there. If I was her, I wouldn't do one single thing until I know that flood's never going to happen again. Yeah. So who do you talk to? You have to talk to your local government to ask, what is the flood mitigation plan for this area that I live in? Because I don't know if I should rebuild back. Also call your insurance company and say that I get this all rebuilt right now, back up and going. What is my premium? What are my deductibles going to be? And do I even qualify? Because you need to seriously look at this kind of stuff. And this is going to be terrible, but you might have to take a buyout. You might have to say, we're not rebuilding. We recovered 2 communities where these people, like, I don't know how many homes were in them, but they were communities, and we had to tear them down. They had to come down after, because when the flood mitigation plan came in, it was, nope, that's the floodplain. So it's got to go. It was devastating. So
that speaks to the slowing down part. But I think, Ginny, if that answers, you can make another comment if you feel like that helped or not. But those are a couple places to start. Keith asked a question of, how do you as a citizen best find solutions a month after the initial emergency? How do we best self-advocate for ourselves and our family?
So you want to work together with your administration, with your council. Those are the ones that are executing the recovery. But what can you do as citizens to do that? That's where you can form your own community groups. But I'm begging you to please not form them to work against your government. You're there to execute, to rebuild back better. So if for the business community, I've formed many of these business recovery task forces. So I take the business licenses and I break them down into the top 10 industries, and then I get someone to represent to sit on that. And from that, there was a lot of investors and commercial investors and realtors. So in High River, it was called the PRAC Committee, the Planning, Renewal, and Advisory Committee. They formed it. There were a bunch of Rotarians, there were a bunch of people who had a lot of investment, real estate, and they got together and they were like, we're just a group of citizens wanting to recover, and we'll lobby. We'll do it. If you want us to go talk to the province, we'll do it. If you want us, so they were like an arm's length, and council then actually elected them to have a voice as well. So you could look at stuff like that, but just do it from a kind place to build together. But yeah, sometimes you just need to form your own, like the Chamber of Commerce kind of philosophy, right? But you don't have to have the memberships. You just have to have people willing to have one objective and all together on it.
Yeah. I'm just going to put up, Barb posted a local relief fund for Princeton and district in case anybody is looking to either one, access help or to donate to, if you go to cfso.net. So perfect. Thank you, Barb. That's going to stay living in the comments. So if you missed that on the screen, you can scroll down and you'll find it in the comments. And we had somebody else ask.
Before you read the next one, Jody, I just want to say, go to Red Cross right now. And this is where I'm a little disruptive and Red Cross might get mad at me and it might not work. But why not go to Red Cross right now and say, can you fund this? Can we have match dollars? Will you match how much we raise locally? Will you raise internationally and match us here for the BC floods or for your own communities? Like, there's nothing wrong with asking, because I've seen it. I've seen it done in other communities.
Yeah. Okay, just know there's a big process in Red Cross dollars.
Yes, red tape.
Someone had asked, can you save this video for people who may not be able to see it live? So it will continually live on this Facebook page, and it is also on YouTube at Limelight Audio and Media. So those two places, this video will stay living all the time, so you can watch it and access it as needed. And then after we're live, you can share it onto your social media also.
And on that note, if you would please comment. Your way you're communicating with us is through the comments there. We are willing to do this once a week if we need to do it twice a week. So our council, I in Fort McMurray and in High River, they passed a policy that a bylaw. They did emergency meetings, and they did them once a week. They didn't increase their pay or anything. I think Fort McMurray did, High River didn't. And those meetings were only for the agenda. They were not to be public attended, but they were live streamed. They were communicated, and their own agenda items were only recovery items. So you had your regular council, and that phased out after a while. Then it went down to once a month, and then it went down to, but it was just for recovery items there. And sometimes you could send in something that you wanted to talk to, and that's where that community group, back to that question, that's where you can send that information in and they can discuss it, that you're looking for some more tools or resources. But yeah, I'm going to leave it with that. We'll just pause there.
Okay. There's no other questions at the moment, but if you have one, again, now live with us, throw it in. If you're wondering about something, go ahead and ask. If you're catching this video later, not live, still feel free to add something into the comments there for sure. But
well, and that's the we're willing to do this once a week, but it won't be us like this. If you want, we can talk about certain items. I specialize in business and economic disaster recovery, but you do have a great team and associations and administration that are doing stuff there. But sometimes, they only work 9 to 5. And if you maybe talk therapy, sometimes works. And so I'm willing to come on. And if business owners just want to talk, or you want to talk about your economy or non-for-profits or any type of topic, we'll just do that. We'll just be that for you. Sometimes it'll just help you keep hope into going, because it's going to have its ups and downs, especially in the seasons you're going. And we'll bring in any experts. So use that chat room to say who you'd like to hear from. And this is just maybe citizens working with citizens that have been through it, like a pay forward kind of chat room.
Yeah.
And yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to kind of talk about on a mental health sort of perspective in this process is going back to what you were talking about earlier when they color coded the homes. Okay, and one of the things that we really learned in that process is that it was hard for people who had green versus people who had reds and all the yellows in between and what that looks like. And so just knowing that if your house is a green and there's going to be emotions around that, and you feeling like, why was my house a green, but Bob's house a red, and I feel guilty from that. They call it kind of, it's very similar to, on a mental health perspective, to what we call survivor's guilt, if that makes sense to you. And so just knowing when your house is a green versus someone's a red. I remember so many people just really struggling with that mental health challenge through the process, in that their house being okay versus someone else's. We need people in communities with greenhouses to help carry the mental health burdens and support of the people with the red houses. If that makes sense, if I'm making any sense to you at all, is that it's just, we need, people have to have okay homes to be able to help continue that community. And it comes back again, circling to the whole connection piece and checking in with people continually on where they are. And sometimes it's a little, it can feel a little daunting to have to be like, hey, Susie, just calling to check on your mental health today. Feels a little bit awkward and crazy. And so there was a tool that was created following the tornado in Joplin, Missouri, by Mercy Hospitals, called How's Your Five? And it allows you to have mental health conversations and connection points with people that feels a little bit easier. And the 5 things you're asking people about are work, play, eat, sleep, and love. So love being relationships, work, different things. So working, and if you want to know more about in your community how to have some of those conversations, let us know. But it allows you to connect with people and connect with yourself through this process. And again, in state of emergency, it's like, what am I doing? Where am I going? What am I packing? Like, where are we sleeping tonight? All of those pieces are really important, of course, but just reminding you that these other pieces are going to come along with you.
Yeah, and you can see the balance that we're here is, I always like Jody's the soft one dealing with all that. And like, I'm like, action, go, do, right. And, but it is important. And I didn't hear it in those years, in those times. So please make it that self-care priority. Comments come in here to talk about temporary housing. So I'm going to touch base on that, because on the mental health right now, you're evacuated. And every time you get an alert on your phone, and every time that you get, start to see it snow or rain, you're going to actually have a feeling that like it's a fight or flight response that is going to happen in you. And because you're nervous. And if you're, oh my God, am I going to get evacuated out of my house? I want you to really communicate to your children and talk to your seniors. Please don't forget about those seniors in there, because they don't have a lot of help too. And but that's where this nervousness comes in. And the sooner you have a plan in any of your communities, you start to mitigate some of this stress. So a temporary housing park is what I call it. You need an area so that if the people do not want to be rushed and want to slow down, where do they go? Temporary housing. So I have made connections with the people that we've used in 2 of the communities in Canada that had disasters, in Fort McMurray and in High River, and they are Sprung and ADCO. So I've talked to both of them, and they are ready to talk. Like, some of them, you don't even need electricity and water. They can bring it in on mobile. But if you can get on that grid system, and if you can hook up to water and have your utilities, they will have temporary housing up fast. Now, I don't understand with the supply chain right now, the global issues that are happening. I don't know, so I can't speak on that. And I also don't know how all the highways, how to get that temporary housing in. So it's a great idea, Angela, but if someone's listening here that is an expert and says, until you get over here and don't understand, we can't get any of this stuff there, I'm going to say back to them, well, you don't have a choice. You got to figure it out, because if you're going to have to bring in big planes with big stuff to put it, we know that you can deploy these houses up fast. And I've seen it done. And the Sprung is all membrane. Like it's incredible what they can do. It can be flowing in, and you don't have a choice. These people need temporary housing right now. So I think that's the key. And there's resources, and there's corporate social responsibility that will step up and sponsor these if they have to. You just got to get hungry, and you got to go after and knocking on doors. The government should be deploying their disaster recovery, the provincial government and the federal government. And I've been watching all the ministers. I'm very educated on it. They're still working it out. It's a lot of money because, like I said, it's a provincial emergency. So
yeah,
I think I think I'll leave it on that one. What's the question?
Okay. Will floodplain maps be reviewed and updated? If so, is it most likely insurance will be denied if it's on a floodplain?
Yeah, so I specifically asked the mayor this question because I knew it was going to come. So and my uncle was the agricultural minister, and he was a chair that sat on the waterworks plan for the government of Alberta. And there was a floodplain updated program that was given to the premier. And it sat on a desk, and then this flood happens. So when I asked Craig today, he said, we still don't have a full floodplain plan. We're still working off of a floodplain of 1992. It's there. It sits on everyone's desks, but it's a big process because of environmental everything to get a floodplain approved. So did they build in areas and did they do that? Yes. And I said, how did you get insurance without doing that? And he said, because we had flood mitigation. So is the safety plan is probably the top priority right now in the EOC, Emergency Operations Center. That's, as you as citizens, that's what I would keep noisy on. How do we know this isn't going to happen again? Because I don't know whether or not to rebuild, because I've learned in High River that 2 communities rebuilt and then they got knocked back down because we did, the flood mitigation came in so everybody could get insurance. And to get insurance, we had to sacrifice a few communities. So it's a great question, and this is the one you need to stay noisy on.
Yeah. Lori asks, in temporary housing, what land would be used and what sanitation could be devised?
So without being on the ground, I don't know. But all I know is that we just had a farmer's field of, I think it was a quarter section, and we just used a part of that. And there was a utilities yeah, we were able to hook up to the grid. I don't know what the water supply is, but you can always bring in a temporary water. And then we just bought portable washroom stuff in until we got set up. But the temporary housing came with the washrooms in it that you just had to all hook up. So it's the temporary housing. I've seen many different ones, but it's like, you can imagine a small little camper. Like it's like an ADCO trailer or those shipping containers. Those are like the sprung ones. Those are actually your house. Like you got a little kitchenette, and it's like your the oil industry. We have a lot of camps off site that they set these up. That's what it looks like. So but I've also seen ones in like down, where was that? Puerto Rico, where they brought in all the mobile, everything was mobile. So the sanitation was your, what are they, portable? Yeah. That kind of stuff. So yeah, it's great questions, but until you're on the ground, I don't know the answers specifically for that area.
But and hoping too that we encourage the governments in these communities to check out the questions that are in these videos also, and know that these are concerns your citizens have, and how can you answer that and help give that information out, and they'll get there.
Yeah, and I guarantee they're 10 steps ahead of us right now. They, you're locked down confidential when you're in the EOC. I would have been fired immediately if I ever released anything that was being talked about in there, because it's being talked about and discussed. And it's until it's finalized, it's not communicated out. So you have to respect that time process. It's never fast enough, but I can guarantee these are agenda items that but they should be communicating with you of we're working on it. This is what we're looking at doing, because you need that hope. The fact that they're asking the questions right now means they haven't been able to find an answer somewhere. And I don't agree with that. But like, that's the fault, that somebody needs to be communicating.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's reminding people that you asking them is going to get that ball rolling too. So we appreciate that you're taking the courage. So this one's a little bit longer. It says, do you have any experience of rebuilding of dikes on the back of private property where the dike was not on the privately owned land, but the government owned land? We're part of a regional district and told the rebuilding of the dike would be at the expense of the owner of the property that backs onto the river. Is there government funding available, or is this something that disaster fund assistance covers?
So I'm going to use the example of, Jody, do you remember the name of you can actually Google this story in the High River Times, that farmer on it was southwest of High River. And he was the last part of the flood mitigation where the roundabout was. And we had the sandbags there I think they just came down last year. Do you
Yeah.
know that farmer's name in that area?
Not off the top of
No.
my head, no.
Okay, so the question that has been asked here exactly happened in High River. Now, it wasn't a dike, but it was on a floodplain. So a farmer wouldn't sell their land. A farmer was like, "Nope, I need to farm it, and I'm fine." And it's so the town was like, "Well, you need to mitigate it, or you need to do this or that." And they're like, "I'm not doing anything to it. You want it done? You can pay for it." And so they were in negotiations for years. So the temporary flood mitigation, the dike, was sandbags for
Mhm.
years and went through many seasons. And so the town just had to keep refilling it every couple of years because it would just break down and go. But to keep the town safe, you had to have this ugliness there. So the answer was that the government, yes, bought out that portion, a small portion of the land, so that they could do flood mitigation on it and protect the town of High River. So, and you can know it went for a pricey dollar, but it was at the sacrifice of saving High River. So, if it happened, I'm going to put that back to the question here that was asked, that she's a if the government owns the land, then the government is responsible. If that's what they decide where a dike is needed, they'll pay for it, they'll fix it. If it's privately owned now, they're going to approach you and say that we need to do this, and they'll probably pay for it. I've never seen where it's not paid for. If you want to do it so that you're protecting your property and it has nothing to do with anything else, yeah, you're probably going to have to pay for that yourself. If your insurance, bring your insurance out, and they say, unless you do that, that, and that. So a lot of our business owners that own commercial property, they had to literally like almost lift their buildings up. We had flood mitigation of the cement foundation had to be 3 feet up. And these business owners were furious about it, or commercial owners, because where am I going to get the money to do this? Well, the government put a DRE program together, 0% interest for up to $1 million. We used it ourselves on the ranch to mitigate all of our fencing that we lost, and we had to build new roads and stuff. So if it is in your pocket, that it comes out of your pocket, usually they have a revolving loan, which is my favorite thing, because I don't believe in a lot of grants. I believe in grants for safety, but I don't believe in grants to sustain businesses and non-for-profits, because it's not viable. You're just band-aiding it, and you need to figure out solutions. I believe in revolving loans, where a portion of it is free after it's paid off and it's going, and it's maybe at 0% interest to keep them going. But I was project managing, I think it was $7 million on temporary buildings in High River. And one of them was a temporary business park. And we shouldn't have ever done it. And the mayor and I still laugh about that. So, because we were propping up businesses at the time, and none of them are open. Back when I was working in Grand Forks, only 80% of the businesses that received grant money stayed open. So that's why you gotta recover yourself. You need help and assistance. So I'm going to go back to the question that was asked: is she needs to figure out, I think it was Meg, she needs to figure out what her responsibility is, and she won't know until the flood mapping is done, till the flood mitigate. Well, the mapping's going to take too long, but what are we doing for flood mitigation for Princeton? And then if her property that she owns shows up on there, yep, she's going to have a conversation of who pays for what.
Yeah. Candace asks, flood mitigation safety plan. Do you have an example of some of the key components to that? What does that look like? Dikes, building codes. Sorry for my ignorance. Don't apologize, Candace. Nobody knows these things until you know these things.
Yeah, no ignorance there, because wait till you hear the response. I don't know. So flood mitigation safety plan. This is customized. So there is a process that they go through, but environmental. So we brought in the Dutch. I forget, they were working with the University of Alberta, and they came and toured. So when the decision was made of what the flood mitigation was and where it was going, we then brought in experts in it to talk about how do we keep that safe, and how do we make it look nice. And that's where High River is one of the most beautiful. It's like a little mini Paris down there, because the walkways, everything they did, you don't even know that the walking path is actually a dike that is there to protect the river and the town. So I don't know the answer to it. There is a process, but the answers to them are customized to each area. And those decisions will be making in your local government and your EOC.
Okay, next question is, have either of you spoken to the Merit EOC?
No, and we'll never be able to, as citizens volunteering, we'll never be able to talk to anybody in the Emergency Operations Center. That they are flat down in a state of emergency and there is no discussion because they are workhorses in there to make sure that you are safe. And that's why they keep the noise out. That's the job of the local. So no, we will never be able to talk to anyone in there.
Once a river changes its course, is it possible the government will reroute it to reclaim property?
Yes, because I saw it happen in Millerville, Alberta, Prentice area to Calgary, Alberta. If you look at the flood mitigation for the downtown of Calgary, it was all based on what are we doing with the water that's coming down. And so they had to find a new path, a new way, and they did that. That's what it finds a new path and you create it that way and you can move it that way. So you can manipulate the water and you can manipulate the storage of it. And so that it can then have the natural flow, like the Bow River where we were on, we'll never get that amount of water again, because as soon as they released the dam, it was like a tsunami come down, and it was within minutes. If they hadn't done that, even more Calgary would have been flooded. So it was a call that came. I actually heard the emergency call. It was recorded when I was in my training after that up in the government, working with Alberta Emergency Management. And it's crazy how they're like, now, pull it. And then just, that's when the houses were literally floating down the river. We watched motorhomes, like we lost our cabin, it lifted it up, and houses and all type of stuff. So that'll never happen again, because now upstream, they've manipulated the water to go somewhere else. And they've also found other storage places for the runoff to come in for storm storage and stuff. And this is where my ignorance, this is where the water engineers come in. So hopefully I answered that.
Lori's just in asking about the EOC. She was just wondering if they were told about these sessions or if we should alert them.
They probably don't have time for this, so they already know everything that we're saying. That they're more trained probably in there than we are, especially in BC. So there's going to be citizens that were appointed in there. Those ones are there for liaison to communicate back and forth to your regular administration and regular council, but they usually bring in experts, and they usually bring in people that are military trained, emergency trained, that kind of stuff. So when the recovery plans start to, like, the government of BC is going to have to decide how much recovery money they're going to give to each community, or what the pool of money is, before they can start to bring the experts in or the experienced people in. So they might look at it, but I think they're probably a little smarter than us with it.
Yeah, and I think really our purpose was just, we wanted to give people a place to ask a few questions and share some of these lessons that we can pass citizen to citizen on to you. So we're not here to give lessons learned to emergency personnel. They know their shit a little more than we do. Sorry for swearing. But we wanted to, from citizen to citizen, just be like, here's some of the things that we witnessed, experienced, did wrong, did right, and just try to help you from that perspective.
And as admitted, please be noisy. Please speak your voice. And I hope you get empowered by this, and that you don't give up on your community. Don't give up on your rebuild, and don't give up on finding the facts. As administration, I couldn't stand people like you. I was like, go away so I can do my job. And I need to answer to these people, and I don't need these calls coming in. But too bad. That's what I signed up for. That's the way it is. You want to be a public servant, and you want to work in government, you're here to serve. That's the way it is. So I want to encourage you as the citizen now is to be that noisy one.
Yeah.
But just do it from a kind
and work together with your community in that process. Like, and once you get information, you share it, and I'll say it 1,000 times, keep connected in with each other. That's the biggest piece. And I know that when we looked after the fact, as we built a community, that we became really close together in that process. We had people that wanted to come and live in High River after everything was done, because they saw this community rallying together. So the strength you guys have is in rallying together. And you're, Ginny versus Lori versus Lisa, like, you all are facing the same things, face them together.
Yeah. And when I say noisy, I mean, knowledge is power. So I mean, like, stay connected and be an arm's length of your counselors, be an arm's length of your administration, where you learn the information from them and you pay it forward. If you go in there and are screaming and yelling at them and talking, you're not going to get anywhere. They don't have time for it, and they need self-care for themselves as well. Anytime I've spoke to any of them in your communities, I've said, please take care of yourself. Like, good luck, because this is a long road. So they're human too, and they live in the community too. And every disaster I've worked on, those are my favorite communities because they are stronger together. It's like a family goes through something, they bond together. So try to keep that in your mind of, I know you're angry and frustrated, but do it from a mature, outcome-based attitude, mindset. And like, I want to just end with it, if there's no more questions, is there's opportunity in disaster every single time. Your non-for-profits right now are not going to have anywhere for fundraising. And the non-for-profits are also have had troubles because of COVID, because the economy comes down, and your non-for-profits are the ones that are helping the ones the most in need. So for a strong economy, for vitality to be so strong in a community, you need to recognize those non-for-profits, and you need to be supporting them. So maybe this is an opportunity that somebody get it together and get an association together, a committee together that represents all the non-for-profits. And that's a pool of money from that local fundraiser can go to those. And maybe we can make those non-for-profits stronger than they were going into this, because they've got more resources donated and more money. And now we can help the lesser, the ones in need in the community. I've seen it done. And also, all the bylaws that were changed, the land uses that were changed, this is an opportunity to build back better with your infrastructure, your water treatment plants, your roads, all this kind of stuff that will draw investment. And if you can do it through disaster recovery, you got to replace it anyways there, and make it a larger capacity for it. Then you can start to do different commercial developments and everything. And then maybe your tax base, that's just a better quality of life. I have seen this happen. I've served and done this. So I want to leave with all of you with hope that you can build back better communities. It'll take a long haul, but have that objective in mind.
Yeah, Glenn's asking for homeowners that could not get flood insurance. What are their options to rebuild without any money?
Okay, so that is a great question, because I think that is what's going to happen. Like, you're in a state of emergency right now in most of them. So communities, when you get out of the state of emergency and kind of go into that phase one of recovery, this is what you're going to come up against. And yeah, the answer is going to be no, you don't have any insurance, or you had a little bit, so you don't qualify now for grants. I had a lady say, I don't qualify for anything from Red Cross and stuff because I had a small portion of insurance, and that's just too bad that I didn't buy a proper insurance policy, probably because they couldn't afford it in their budget. This is where the disaster recovery program, DRP, came from the government of Alberta. So I'm just going to tell this story because maybe this is what's going to happen in BC. So if you had an $800,000 house, you're probably going to receive money to build a $600,000 house from the government. If you had granite, you're now going to get the line, like, what is it called? The cheaper counters. If you had hardwood, you're going to get lino. They build back to the basics because it's taxpayers' money, and they make sure they give you shelter. But that's the reality that happened in High River. Also in Fort McMurray, because there were some people that didn't get enough insurance or didn't qualify in those areas, and you had to rebuild them back, but they got very little to build it back. But there was government funding available.
Yeah, and I don't know what it will look like, and I'm not super educated on this piece, but there was also a lot of what we call NGO support in that process. So there were non-government organizations, is what that stands for, and they came in because they had dollars. And so these are like, I'm trying to think of the names of them now, and of course they're going to go right out of my brain, but like Salvation Army, like, what was it called? There was a Mennonite group, and there was other organizations that came in that helped with some of that rebuild process because they have fundraising dollars to help with that. That could be a possibility that comes towards for homeowners also.
And back to that question of what can we do as citizens to advocate, there is an idea. There's something right there that talk to your social services or your emergency social services, whatever it is, and find out where the gaps is and get on the phone. Like my friend that reached out to me, she just got on the phone. She's just starting to call resources and doing stuff and connecting and trying to connect resources. That's just a citizen paying forward.
Samaritan's Purse. Thank you, Candace. Mennonite Central Committee. Thank you, Lori. I knew they. Becky's asking, in your experience, does any level of government support displaced residents with temporary housing beyond a couple of weeks?
Yeah, years. The Saddlebrook community was up for a couple of years, and then we just slowly phased it out as it went down. We were fortunate that I've never worked on a disaster that didn't. So when they commit to putting the temporary housing, I've never seen government kick somebody out on the street. It's like, when's the transition back, or when? So investors, when I talk about opportunity, we saw investors come in and build affordable housing. And the government made it easier. They got rid of the red tape, the policy, like everything in place, land use where it could go, because it's, well, okay, we've lost that. Sometimes it'll be a mobile park because it's been there for a lot of years, or houses that were along the river. So they would say, well, we're going to take those away because the river's going to flow that way and the mitigation is going to go there. So we need affordable housing. So if the town or the community owns land, they can put that up and make it available. And then a developer can come in and pick it up and start to build that. And so you need the temporary housing until that transition happens.
Yeah. Candace just shares that a lot of the Princeton folks are on evac notice or alert tonight. So hoping to share this video with them who weren't able to watch, and we can 100% appreciate that. But
yeah, we did discuss whether canceling this because when we saw those alerts come through, and I'm keeping a close eye on all the BC stuff, but nobody is in the mood to sit in front of and listen to something when that's going on. So Jody, as the host here, this is her background. I said, make sure that this video is available. So if you guys just want to keep sharing it, that's what it's for, because I understand that. And please let us know if you want to have us back and who to bring in. Jody's a great host.
Yeah. If you have questions on certain areas, or you'd really like to speak to or hear someone speak to certain things, feel free to post that into the comments also, and we will try our hardest to find someone who is knowledgeable and expert in those sectors for you, so that you can ask some questions and find out some more information. So please post that, because I think we go back to, gosh, what were we thinking on this day at this time, and what would I really have loved to know? And we're almost like 8 years is a long way to go back in my old gal memory. So please just like throw in, like, I want to know about this. I want to know about this. I want to know about this. Throw that in there, and we will continue to source out some people to come and talk to you if this platform works. So just feel free to give that feedback, because again, we're just two people who we just know what you're going through, and it's a lot. But we're here. There's people to help you. There's people who have went through it. I would have loved to have people go on for High River and be like, oh, we did this. This is what we did. Like, and sometimes even as, I don't know, it feels a little, I don't want to say flippant to say, but like just hearing, like, honestly, friends, you're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. And that might feel like that's not what I want to hear right now, but I'm going to say it again, because you're going to be okay and you're going to get through this.
Yep. I'm glad, that's probably a good thing that we can end on that note, because you're going to have this wave of emotions. And when you're here, please talk therapy, reach out, try to figure out the things that'll pull you out. Don't honor that space where you're down and out and you're nervous. What your plans were just got completely adjusted. As a business coach, that's always why I'm teaching that succession, like, make sure you have a disaster recovery plan in place, because there's man-made disaster and natural disaster. I've been serving in man-made disaster COVID here for a little bit, and now we're into a natural disaster. So you guys got both going on, and it's going to be different. But you have to put a business head on right now, and you have to make business decisions. But first, you need to make sure you're safe and you're healthy. And then, do I rebuild? This is where I want to live. Is the workforce there? Is your business where your job, is it still going to stay? 30% of businesses close after a disaster is the statistics. And business owners, I want you to really, really take a good look at your cash flow. You don't know what your revenue is going to be, because we don't know what the fluctuation of the economy is going to be from this. So we don't know if the regular spending monies are going to happen. The budgets are going to be different for everybody. Do you still have a viable business? And don't go borrow a bunch of money and stuff to keep going in second mortgages because you don't know what else to do. Get your business head on, and do you have a viable business? Because you can scream at everybody else that it's all the government's fault. No, that's why my business failed. But I'm telling you, you can't pass the buck. You got to decide whether or not it's a viable business, and it's tough. And you need to do it at the right time. I've seen a lot of businesses just close. Just slow down, close your business, close your doors, take a breath, look after yourself, talk to your landlord. There should be some programs and stuff coming out right now so that they're covered and all that. I'm working for a couple of clients in BC, just paying forward, getting resources for them. So look at that stuff. And on a final note, please, this is contaminated stuff in your houses and in your businesses. Take it very serious of the sanitization. The bacteria is airborne, and you're breathing it in. You'll have long-term effects from it. So masks, disinfectant, your gloves, everything. When you leave your house, please don't bring it back into the car or into it. Put it in the bag, because it's all bacteria being airborne in there. So we've just seen so many horror stories over that for long term.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, if you are catching this later, or we've spurred some thoughts for you that you want to ask some more questions, please post them in the comments and we will get back to them. If there's more areas that you would like some more information on, post that in the comments, and we'll keep you updated on these pages when we'll be back and who will be next, so that you can tune in and catch up on some information. But just know 100% tonight that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not be sure what's happening next, but you are not alone, and you are going to get through this.
Yeah. And you're all in all of our thoughts and prayers everywhere, all over the world, but mostly in Canada right now. Jody was actually reached out. There was somebody in Creston, BC, that like the volunteers and the resources and the donations are already starting. You are not alone in this. So just take care of yourself. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. And again, keep the conversation going in the comments and stay connected. And we'll be back again next week to hopefully bring you some more information. Okay. Good night.
Good night.